New York City, this is what you have to look forward to. From our friends at Breitbart, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says finances at point of no return without, quote, massive tax hikes. Chicago's self-professed progressive, Democrat Mayor Brandon Johnson is warning that the city's finances, quote, are at the point of no return, unquote, unless he gets massive tax hikes to replace dwindling revenue. Johnson told his constituents that the systems that the people rely on are woefully underfunded. He wants higher taxes. He says, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. My commitment is to progressive revenue. I can't do this by myself. Progressive revenue? Chicago's facing a disastrous $1.1 billion budget deficit for 2026. And Johnson insists he needs more progressive revenue options to fill the shortfall, according to CBS News. Now, while Johnson did not lay out any particular tax hikes, he has previously said he's looking into instituting a millionaire tax, re-implementing the per-employee head tax on corporations doing business in the city, and imposing a tax on social media advertising, so people will flee that city even faster than they already are. Late last year, Johnson's plan for a huge $300 million increase in property taxes was knocked down by the city council in a rare unanimous rebuke of a Windy City mayor's proposed budget. Johnson has since promised not to float that taxing scheme again anytime soon. For one, they have a problem with the state legislature, it says. State Democrats beat back demands that more state dollars be handed to Chicago's mass transit system. I want you to think about Mamdani as I go through this, America. Worst left-wing Democrat Governor J.B. Pritzker, he is a sleazeball extraordinaire, signed a bill that puts an even greater burden on Chicago's already unfunded pension system with a new law that adds an unsustainable $11 billion in additional pension costs for the city's fire and police departments. So Illinois is going to collapse, in my humble opinion. The wild growth in taxes has been a chief reason businesses and residents are leaving Chicago. For years, Chicago was one of the worst-case cities for losing population. Over the last 2 years has seen some small growth. That growth, though, is only because of the arrival of 96,000 aliens, mostly illegal. This is what's going to happen in New York, but even in a bigger sense. Productive citizens, tax-paying citizens, law-abiding citizens, regardless of race, they're going to leave. If they can get out, they're going to get out. If they're going to get out, they can get out, they're going to get out. I want to read something to you, just to show you the relevance of this book, constant relevance of On Power, and the need to get it in people's hands. And I'm doing my best. The extensive written history I write in On Power of the cunningly named progressive movement unapologetically declares its purpose, as does its modern progeny, in a flood of essays, books, and speeches, to fundamentally transform America. It is a force and presence in the United States, as it is in all Western democracies, albeit operating under different party and official nomenclatures, where truly enlightened progress is met with regressive and primitive ideological forces hailed as modern and futuristic, thus tearing down the barriers to centralized decision-making and governmental power and diminishing individual freedom to re-engineer society and indeed mankind are essential objectives, if not the epitome of both soft negative power and negative power. Now, that soft negative power and negative power I'm talking about are people like this, Johnson and Mamdani and the rest of them. This is precisely why the early progressive intellectuals in America in the late 1800s and early 1900s, including future Democrat President Woodrow Wilson, relentlessly and furiously assailed both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, especially separation of powers and federalism. Woodrow Wilson wrote about the need for a living and breathing Constitution, and he insisted it be understood within an allegory to the human body. Now, how, Wilson asked, can a person live if his organs are constantly working against each other rather than in harmony? In other words, separation of powers, the heart of the Constitution, is as deadly to America as the separation of organs in the human body would be. Now, Wilson was an early Marxist, American Marxist. And when I spoke to people in New Jersey at the book signing, a lot of them said they hadn't known a lot of this about Wilson, which is why I'm specifically and explicitly addressing this in the book on power and relaying it to you. And there's, of course, every time I read from the book, understand there's far more in the book, per se, than that I'm relaying to you. Moreover, Wilson and his progressive contemporaries argued that successive generations, listen, are not bound by the decisions and doctrines of the past, and we need not adhere to them any more than the authors of the Declaration or the Constitution were bound by those who preceded them, Wilson argued. We are free to do as we wish, just as they were, and we need not worship them or what they wrote. Wilson and his ilk argued for a sinister revolution, indeed launched that revolution, in which intellectual elites and self-appointed experts, through a ruling class of like-minded manipulators and schemers, social engineers and contrivers, would employ the instrumentalities of the unelected and non-representative parts of the federal government and further empower them in service to the cause of the so-called new progressivism, that is a form of European totalitarianism that I previously termed American Marxism. That's what's happening in Chicago. That's what's happening in L.A. That's certainly what's going to happen in New York if they don't get that taken care of. Now, in this way, the Constitution could be altered, if not bypassed, with the top-down imposition of life-altering directives, regulations, and ultimatums to accomplish their ends. The will of the people, through actual representative bodies, is to be adhered to only when convenient and aligned with the ruling class's causes and goals. Otherwise, it is to be circumvented, killed through delay and atrophy, or, where feasible, simply ignored. Woodrow Wilson and others insisted that a complete break from the past is required, just like Marx, a blank slate upon which to design this new governing blueprint. In this, they were mimicking Karl Marx. At first, Wilson couldn't decide if this was best accomplished through an all-powerful president or judiciary, but he eventually settled on what he considered the most obvious and certain means by which to accomplish this scheme, that is, the judiciary. What better means to achieve the progressive ends, he believed, than the careful selection and appointment of ideological soulmates who serve for life without any effective method for public accountability, who would drive this revolution and give it a legal pretext, justification, authority, and protection. Indeed, if your objective is the fundamental transformation of constitutional republics and parliamentary democracies into centralized leviathans, the path of least resistance and maximum impact would seem to be the judiciary. And we have more decisions today. We have another federal court way outside its lane saying and putting a halt on any further construction on the so-called Alcatraz facility. So basically, the federal judiciary has taken over immigration, taken over the facilities, taken over deportation efforts. The entire premise for this revolution is not, for example, as Marx and others predicted and hoped, to foment a bottom-up movement, that is, the oppressed proletariat overthrowing the oppressor bourgeoisie. For in much of the Western world, and certainly in America, the public do not seek such a violent revolution. In fact, in America and elsewhere, there is no popular will to overthrow the existing society. And on the contrary, the people have and are prepared to fight and die for this country. Now, this is a very, very important point. The point being, even though people say, even though some people say, yes, Mamdani and so forth, yes, Johnson, they do not support, if it's explained, the overthrow of the system. They do not support open borders and illegal aliens coming in. They do not support the government control of the means of production. Oh, there's some that do, of course. These are the fanatics or the imbeciles. But you see what's happening in Chicago. I just read you that article. It's going broke. It's going broke. Massive tax increases. So it'll go broke even faster. So the productive elements are going to leave. So the citizenry is going to leave if they can. They're going to get up and move. That's what's happening all over the country. This is New York's future. This is New York City's future if this Mamdani gets elected. But it's important to try and fight these people, try and stop them. In Johnson's case, to try and make sure he doesn't even get nominated again. In Mamdani's case, to make sure he doesn't get elected again. And we need certain tools, certain arguments. We need words. We need sentences. We need terms to take them on, to stop them. And people need to understand what's going on. You don't have to be a professor, neither do I. You don't have to be a proselytizer. If you digest the things I've written in this book, or for that matter, give this book to people who you think can be influenced, or at least have them open their minds, you will have done what you need to do, or what I think you can do, to try and stand up to this. That's why I don't write books about, look at me, or write books about, let me tell you how to live, or write books about, let me tell you about these 17 people and why they're important. I don't do that. I'll leave it to other people and their ghostwriters. I don't do that. The issue here is we have a short time on this earth. We have to spend our time living it freely, fully, happily, and to ensure that the next generation can do the same thing. We have individuals who want to destroy this society, this culture, this republic. We've got to push back. These ideas matter. People are going into that voting booth. They don't even know what they're voting for. Or they think they know what they're voting for, but they really don't. And so for our fellow citizens, and for us, and for our own families in the future, generations yet born, we need to be the Paul Reveres and the Thomas Paines. Do books have consequences? You better believe they do. Do ideas have consequences? You better believe they do. The Communist Manifesto mattered in a very big way. And those ideas, unfortunately, despite the 100 million dead as a result, they still persist. They're still passed along. Well, we can do the same thing in the promotion of positive power against negative power. We can do the same thing if we understand how they're trying to control language. But no, we're not going to allow it. We will speak the right language. Their goal, thought control. No, we're going to fight the thought control. People ask me all the time, what can we do? What can we do? What should we do? Inform ourselves. Read the book. Pass the information along. Pass the education along. Each and every one of us. To one person, 2 people, 10 people, to family members and friends. We can do this. We can do this. There may be a time when we can't. There may be a time when we can't. I've often said I was born at the wrong time, that I should have been born around the time of the founding. Man, would I have loved that. Would I have loved to have been a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. I would have loved it. But here we are today. This is our own Constitutional Convention. This is our own National Town Hall meeting. We need to do what they did. We need to do what others have done, and we need to do it today. We can't just throw up our hands that it's over. We can't just throw up our hands and complain about it. We can do this, each and every one of you. You're the pamphleteers. You're the voices. You're the people who make the difference. You're red-blooded, patriotic Americans. You have this power. You have this power.